Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Pittsburgh Sports Memories podcast. I am your co host, Tim Hannon, and joining me on the podcast is.
Steve Wirt.
Hi, Steve.
Hey, Tim. We're back for another one.
Another exciting memory. And this memory is going to be of Super Bowl 14. Out of all the Steelers Super Bowls, I feel like this is the most forgotten, but I think it deserves revisiting because there's a lot to the story, and I really want to do a more of a deep dive into this game. So, to tell the story of Super Bowl 14, which, uh, as we said, took place during at the conclusion of the 1979 season, I wanted to start in a logical place, the year 2018.
Wow. Interesting.
Specifically,
That's an interesting it's an
yeah,
interesting strategy there, Tim. Let's see how
yeah,
this works out.
yeah.
Yeah.
So specifically, Week 15 of the 2018 NFL season, the Steelers are hosting the Patriots at Heinz Field. And if you're a Steelers fan, you know that the Steelers never really had a whole ton of success against the Brady Belichick era Patriots. The Patriots that season, they're good in a really bad AFC East division, but they weren't going to be a top seed in the AFC that year or anything like that. They had also just lost two of their past four games. And it ends up being a close game. The Steelers are clinging to a slim lead in the fourth quarter. But here comes Tom Brady marching down the field for the chance to once again defeat Pittsburgh. And this is how that game ends.
Steelers drop back right around the first down yardage at the 6. Here's Brady down the middle, and it's knocked down, incomplete. Intended for Edelman. And after 3 difficult and demoralizing weeks, the Pittsburgh defense today steps up.
So great win. The Steelers beat Tom Brady for one of the only times ever. And the Steelers are victorious. So, Tim, why are you bringing that up? I thought this was an episode about Super Bowl 14. Well, let's come back to that later. So let's talk about Super Bowl 14. The game is played on January 20th, 1980 at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, California, and it's attended by 103,985 spectators.
I think I know who one of the people is that's at this game.
Who's that?
I think it's Tom Brady, isn't it?
Oh, I don't know. No, that was not my connection with the 2018 Patriots.
Oh, it was a good guess on my part. Probably
he may have been. He was what?
He doubted. He probably watched it on TV like the rest of us.
The 103,985 spectators, by the way, still to this day, Steve, a Super Bowl record.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Where was that? That Rose Bowl?
The Rose Bowl.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Pasadena. Yeah, it's.
Well, the Coliseum's bigger, is it? But they don't have Super Bowls at the Coliseum anymore.
I think Super Bowl one.
I think that's the only one.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know if there's a stadium. I believe that the Dallas Stadium holds the new Dallas Stadium, the one where the Steelers played the Packers. I believe that holds almost as many people as the Rose Bowl, but it didn't have as many fans at that game as they did at this game.
Well, that was the one too. Remember where some of the fans couldn't get into the seats because Jerry Jones got greedy and put in like seats, and like the like building inspector was like, yeah, you can't have people sit in them. He tried to Howard Baldwin some seats into his building, and they're like, it wasn't like Pittsburgh. It's like, yeah, sure, Howard, you can do whatever you want. Texas was a little more, I guess, stringent there.
So no other Super Bowl has been attended by this many people. So the matchup for this game is the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Los Angeles Rams. Before we get to the game, let's talk a little bit about how those two teams got to the game. So the Steelers are coming into the 1979 season as the team of the decade already. They had arguably the greatest win in franchise history up to that point, beating Dallas in the Super Bowl the year before.
I heard Jackie Smith was really sick over it.
He was the sickest man in America.
And it was obvious that Dallas only lost because that guy broke his arm. Yeah, fumbled the ball.
Right. And
lucky Steelers.
Because Jackie Smith dropped the pass, even though that was not really what made them lose that game. But that's a story for another podcast. Needless to say, that game was really huge. I mean, both of those teams going into that game, both of those teams had won 2 Super Bowls. It was the battle for who was the greatest team ever, Clash of the Titans. Steelers prevailed. And that really cemented their status as this all-time great dynasty. Fans in Pittsburgh are wondering how far this can go. John Banaszak said, quote, "The attitude was, we are going to win this thing every year. The Steelers will never lose."
I like the confidence.
Yeah, and that was the players and the fans. I mean, it was just like, hey, bring on more championships. This thing's never going to end. So what happens in 1979? Well, the Steelers end up having the NFL's #1 offense, which that seems like light years ago today, doesn't it, Steve? And they have the NFL's #2 defense. They win 12 games. So just by those numbers, you'd think, oh yeah, pretty dominant season, but not really. They actually have a bunch of injuries that they suffer through. Joe Green, Rocky Bleier, Lynn Swann, they all get hurt early. In December, Jack Ham hurts his ankle. He's out for the season. Mike Wagner hurts his hip. He's out for the season. They have some bad games along the way. They get blown out by the 0-6 Bengals. They commit an NFL high 52 turnovers. Hard to believe that a team with 12 wins would lead the league in turnovers. And then in week 12, they go to San Diego to play the Chargers. The Chargers have the best record in the AFC, and they get destroyed 35-7. Bradshaw throws 5 interceptions. So they have 12 wins, but it's mostly against a weaker schedule. They're only 3-3 against playoff teams. They beat Miami in the divisional round. And then that same weekend, the Oilers massively upset the Chargers. Steve, if you remember, that was the game where the Oilers stole the signals from the San Diego offensive coordinator. We talked about that in a previous episode.
Oh, man.
I thought about that recently because at the time that we're recording this, there's this big controversy over Jim Harbaugh in Michigan stealing signals. And it's interesting because that game, the Chargers and Oilers in 79, not only did the Oilers still steal their signals, but in the week, like right after the game, the interviews they did after the game, they were bragging about, yeah, we knew their plays. They didn't hide their signals good enough. We figured we decoded them. And it was like a badge of honor, like that they figured it out. I just think that's so interesting compared to today.
I think that's different if they were sitting on their own sideline and they just figured it out. Then what Michigan apparently did was like have a guy fake to be part of the opposing team's coaching staff and take like pictures and notes of stuff. I mean,
that's fair. That's a good point. Like there's a difference between like you didn't hide it good enough and like espionage and spying and videotaping.
Yeah, I mean, if you're on your own sideline or or in a part of the stadium where it isn't on their sideline. Yeah, although I mean, Belichick was doing that. He was recording where was he on their sideline too? Like he was recording I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, they were videotaping stuff, right? It's you're right. There is a difference. That is a difference. That's a fair statement. Regardless, that was a big deal because it meant that instead of the Steelers having to go out to San Diego for the AFC Championship game, a place that they had just gotten blown out a few weeks earlier, they get to host it at Three River Stadium. They beat Houston to advance to the Super Bowl. That game is not without controversy. Oilers
Mike
wide
Renfro.
receiver, Mike Renfro catches what appears to be the game-tying touchdown pass in the second half, but the refs say he's out of bounds. It's a terrible call. I mean, I'll just be honest, as a Steeler fan, they totally blew that call and hosed the Oilers. So the Steelers are back in the Super Bowl, and they earned it. Like I hate when people try to, well, they made this team made this accomplishment, but if you look at all these other factors, they didn't really deserve it. No, they made it to the Super Bowl, right? They deserved it. I'm not going to take away from that. My point.
I mean, you have to win the games that are there. You can't help it. San Diego didn't win their. I mean. Yeah, maybe that's why Dan Fouts hates the Steelers so much. I don't know.
And they got a lucky call against Houston.
But they still won by like 2 touchdowns. So it wasn't.
Yeah, and they lost to the good teams they played on their schedule. Whatever, they still made it there. So I don't subscribe to. I don't like when people do that. My only point, I guess, in all this, Steve, is when they get to the Super Bowl, it doesn't have this feel of this great dominant dynasty like it maybe did in those other years in the 70s, if that makes sense.
Well, that explains I know this Super Bowl just from watching the highlights, that that adds a good perspective, because after I've watched, like, if you watch the NFL films highlights, you're kind of like, ooh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not a dominant Super Bowl win.
Yeah.
I'm not giving anything away here, I don't think, Tim.
No.
Yeah.
No, it's no. That's fair. It's no spoilers there.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Rams. The Rams were one of the best teams of the 1970s. They just happened to have the bad luck of being in the same conference as the Vikings and Cowboys. Los Angeles loses. I didn't realize this till I did this research, Steve. Los Angeles loses the 1974, 1975, 1976, and 1978 NFC Championship games, all to the Vikings and Cowboys.
Wow.
So, like, literally, they're one game away from the Super Bowl every year, but they just can't get over the Minnesota-Dallas hump. By 1979, the Vikings and Cowboys are kind of fading. Their dynasties are kind of ending. So now maybe the Rams can make some headway. It's a really weird season for the Rams, though. It starts when their owner, Carroll Rosenblum, dies
dies in his pool.
Yeah, it's officially classified as an accidental drowning.
Oh, come on. She didn't kill him.
Well, I didn't say
you
that.
think Georgia Fonterra? She didn't kill.
I said it's officially classified as an accidental drowning. That's fact.
The dude had a heart attack in the pool.
There are people who think later that he was murdered. So yeah, their owner dies. That's an ominous way to start the season. And then the season itself is a rocky one. The Rams only win 9 games, but their division sucks. So that gets them into the playoffs. Their starting quarterback is a guy named Pat Hayden. He breaks his hand and he's out for the season. So now they're playing their backup quarterback, a guy named Vince Ferragamo.
Pat Hayden. Well, I forgot Pat Hayden played for the Rams.
Yes. Yeah. But he's not playing in the Super Bowl. So the Rams make it back to the NFC Championship game. But this time, instead of playing Dallas or Minnesota, they're playing the Cinderella Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Weren't they just 0-6? I'm sorry, 0-14 like 2 years ago?
They were. Hence the Cinderella Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
From 0-14 to the NFC Championship game. That's a heck of a turnaround.
It was a great story. Their quarterback was a guy named Doug Williams, who would have kind of a Cinderella story of his own, like 10 years later with Washington. But
we should play the. Do you ever hear the Tampa Bay fight song from the 70s? If you haven't, go listen to it. It's amazing.
Okay,
it's 70s tastic.
So the Rams beat the Buccaneers 9-0 in the NFC Championship game. The Tampa Bay Cinderella story ends there.
Doug Williams with the goose egg, huh?
Yes. So
was that like just a bunch of field goals too?
Not sure. Good question. It could have just been 3 field goals. Yeah.
Oh my! Wow.
Yep, that's exciting 70s football.
NFL football, catch the fever, huh?
Can't believe they changed all those rules to make it more offensively balanced.
Yeah.
So kind of like the Steelers, I don't want to take anything away. Like the Rams made it to the Super Bowl. You can't say they didn't make it to the Super Bowl, or they got lucky and they didn't have to play this team and whatever. But it is worth mentioning that there's only one team in the history of the NFL to make it to a Super Bowl with a lower point differential than the 1979 Rams. And that's a good trivia question, Steve. If you care to take a guess of who the only team was with a lower point differential that made it to the Super Bowl.
Are we circling back?
No, this is
no.
Just take a guess.
Lower point differential. Did they have to win the Super Bowl or just make the Super Bowl?
Just make it.
I don't know. 99 Rams. I don't know. Sure.
No, that team scored a lot of points. No, it's the 2011 New York Giants.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought because they gave up a lot of points, it might. I don't know.
That was not a bad guess then for that reason, but you're still wrong.
Because point differentials is the space between how much you score and how much you give up,
correct.
right? So you could have a bad defense and a good offense.
No, you're right. That's fair. I didn't think about that. You're right. You could score a ton of points, but if you gave up a ton of points, you still have a low point differential. Anyway, so that team.
Math is fun, isn't it?
It is fun.
I don't think we do enough math on this podcast.
No, we got to add in more math segments for sure. That'll really reel people in.
Yeah, that's what people want.
So kind of an odd matchup because on one hand, you had two of the most winningest teams of the decade finally squaring off in the Super Bowl. I mean, you figure there was like 4 times where these two teams barely missed each other, and one of them lost in the championship game. And now they're finally squaring off in a Super Bowl. On the other hand,
it's the matchup people have been waiting for.
But then, you look on the other hand, both these teams had been decimated by injuries and both weren't exactly lighting the world on fire to get here. Regardless, the Steelers are still heavy favorites for this game. Maybe they hadn't steamrolled their way through the season like they had in years past, but it's still the all-time great dynasty. And all-time great dynasties don't lose to a 9-7 team with a backup quarterback. One of the group of people that got a little too wrapped up in this was the Rams players.
Well, players, they get looking for anything for motivation. So
yeah,
I'll give them that.
There's a lot of talk the week before the game about how insulted they feel. And there's even talk early in the week of the Rams players boycotting the media. They have all those media day things and all that kind of stuff. The Rams players openly talked about boycotting it because
you could have pulled the Marshawn Lynch. I'm just here so I don't get fined.
The Rams ultimately do talk to the media and talk about how they're underdogs and how they're motivated and they have a backup quarterback. Let's talk actually about that backup quarterback. Vince Ferragamo was a 4th-round draft pick out of Nebraska. 1979 is his 3rd NFL season.
All those great Nebraska quarterbacks. What a lit age there.
His 3rd NFL season. He had never started a game before that year. His stats aren't great. He has twice as many interceptions as touchdowns, but he had gone 4-1 during the regular season, and he had led the Rams to 2 road wins in the playoffs to get to the Super Bowl. But, make no mistake, the Rams are a run-first team. Ferragamo is a game manager quarterback. That's the kind of offense they're running coming into this game. I mean, 9-0 in the NFC Championship game should tell you that. The Rams do have a pretty good defense. They have 3 Pro Bowlers on defense, including Hall of Famer Jack Youngblood. And their defensive coordinator is another thing I didn't realize till I started researching this episode, Steve. It's Bud Carson.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and Bud Carson was the Steelers' defensive coordinator for their first 2 Super Bowls. He had literally architected the Steel Curtain. He left the Steelers in 1978 because he said he wanted a new challenge. I wonder, Steve, if it's very similar to Eric Bieniemy when he left Kansas City, where Eric Bieniemy had this great offense in Kansas City, but he was kind of in the shadow of Andy Reid, and he wanted to go somewhere else and kind of prove he could do it on his own. And I think Bud Carson might have felt the same way being in the shadow of Chuck Noll. So he leaves to go to the Rams, and I mean, obviously he does pretty well because he gets the Rams to a Super Bowl. It's an interesting angle for the game too, because it's the exact same thing as years later when the Steelers faced Ken Whisenhunt in the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. It's just reversed. Ken Whisenhunt was the offensive coordinator. And when Ken Whisenhunt was the offensive coordinator for Arizona, he was going up against the Steelers' top-ranked defense. Now Bud Carson's the defensive coordinator going against the Steelers' top-ranked offense. And in both cases, you're like, boy, we have the top-ranked unit, but they have a coach who probably knows how to play us. So as we go through this game, we're going to play a lot of audio as we typically do on this podcast, but I'm going to use the radio calls and the NFL films clips from this game instead of the TV broadcast.
In the 14-year history of a Super Bowl, never have 2 teams been so different. The Steelers were the defending champions. They had the best record in the NFL and came to Pasadena supported by the loudest, most loyal fans in all of football. The Rams, on the other hand, had the worst record of any team ever to play in a Super Bowl. And unlike the Steelers, they looked at their fans with cynicism and indifference. For these were the same people who had booed and insulted them at mid-season when they were hurt and in second place.
Wow. What the heck? They just insulted the people of Los Angeles.
So
the heck with you, LA people. Wow. I don't remember that at all.
Yeah. So
maybe okay. I guess that's more Steeler favored, at least towards the fan side.
Well, it's really not. So let me explain that, because that thing about the Rams players being at war with their fans, that's not just NFL Films making stuff up. It's very real. Offensive lineman Dennis Hara of the Rams, in the week leading up to the game, he gives an interview. This is a quote. Remember, this is a few days before the Super Bowl, and this is a Rams player. Quote, "We were glad to not have home field advantage for the playoffs so we could be away from our terrible fans."
They wanted to go on the road. They were happy to go to Tampa.
He also talks about how when the Oilers lost the AFC Championship game in Pittsburgh, and they came back to Houston, they had 30,000 fans greeting them at the airport after they lost.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the Rams won the NFC Championship game, and there was almost no one to welcome them back. And so you can see this like us against the world mentality here with the Rams. You know, the media had written them off. Their fans had written them off. They want so badly to prove everybody wrong. So after 2 weeks of hype and media coverage and interviews and analysis, and the Rams players trashing their fans, the game is finally ready to kick off. So the Steelers kick off, the Rams go 3 and out, and then the Steelers drive all the way down the field, very methodically mixing passes and runs. The Rams do hold them at the 24-yard line. So here's Jack Fleming and Myron Cope with the most exciting call ever of a mundane first quarter field goal.
Barr comes from a soccer family at Penn State University. His brother Chris kicks for the Cincinnati Bengals. The ball is down, and he has the kick going downfield, but it comes in low. No, it is good.
It just made it.
From up here.
I pushed and I flew, and it just got over.
I love it.
So
and Matt Barr, like, this is way, like, you're going from, like, you know, the worst kicker ever to, like, one of the best kickers ever. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, Matt Barr has a really long career. This is Super Bowl 14. He kicks the game-winning field goal in Super Bowl 25 years later for the Giants with like 3 minutes left, kicks the game-winning field goal. So he had a very long and productive career. So right off the bat, it's kind of just like people predicted. The Rams are going to get blown out. Steelers are going to dominate. But then the Los Angeles offense starts to settle down. And on the next drive, they get some momentum.
Wendell Tyler's 39-yard gain early in the first quarter was the longest run permitted by Pittsburgh all year, and it's worth another look. Although he didn't become a starter until the 5th week of the season, Tyler finished the year as the Rams' leading rusher. And this weaving trip through the Steelers set up the first touchdown of Super Bowl 14.
Yeah, and like John Facenda said there, Wendell Tyler, the Los Angeles running back, it's another guy who isn't even a starter until recently. And he has this really brilliant 39-yard run.
He had a nice hole, too, but he still had to play. I mean, not that Mel Blount should be tackling people, but Mel Blount had a shot at him for like a 4-yard gain, and he broke his tackle. Good play by him.
And it leads to a Rams touchdown. So it's 7-3 Rams. So now the Rams kick off back to the Steelers, and here's what that sounded like.
Larry Anderson down deep. Frank Corral will kick it left to right, teed up at the 35, and Corral sends it downfield, and Anderson takes it at his own 3. Over the 5, the 10, the 15, swings left over the 20, the 25, breaks the tackle, the 30, the 35, the 40, the 45, and finally ridden out of bounds at the 50-yard line as he was caught by Joe Harris.
The unsung hero of this game is Steelers kick returner Larry Anderson. He finishes the game with 5 returns for 162 yards. That's about 40 yards per kick return. And this is a close game. I mean, think about what a huge advantage it is.
Hidden yardage, yeah.
Yeah. So the Steelers offense, thanks to that kick return, they have a short field to work with. They march down the field. Franco Harris scores on a 1-yard touchdown run. So now it's 10-7 Steelers early in the second quarter. These are long drives. So we're already in the second quarter. On the Rams' next drive, they march down the field on the Steelers defense again. They get into the red zone, but the Steelers hold them to a field goal. Bradshaw then throws an interception. And again, the Rams march down the field, and again, they kick a field goal. Both of those field goal drives by Los Angeles, they're really long. The Rams, like we said, they're a running team. So they're controlling the clock. They're overpowering the Steelers defense. The Rams were a very conservative offense. Like we said, they have a backup quarterback. And so their game plan coming into this game is, okay, our bread and butter is running the ball. But if we're going to upset this team, we have to let our quarterback make at least some plays. And he does. He actually makes some big throws, including a 4th and 8 conversion on that second drive. They actually go for it on 4th and 8, and Ferragamo completes a pass.
Where were they? 4th and 8. Wow. Where were they on the field?
They were in Steelers territory, but
okay. Were they in that no man's land between like the 30 and 40 or something? Yeah,
they were, but I mean, still, it's in a game like this. It's just
that's a big play. 4th and 8 too, like, because normally you don't like to go, like, my mind, like 4th and 5 or less is normally.
Well, like, and you have a backup quarterback in the game, and you're playing against the all-time great dynasty. I think, you know what it reminds me of, Steve, as I kind of watch this game? It reminds me of the 2005 Steelers Colts playoff game. How, like, the Steelers came out for that game. They're like, look, this Colts team was so good that year. We're not going to beat them by handing off to Jerome Bettis every play. And Ben Roethlisberger was a second-year quarterback. He wasn't the all-time great Ben that we knew years later. But they realized we have to let him make some plays. We have to take some chances, let him throw the ball, or else we're just not even going to have a chance. And I feel like that's what the Rams did with Ferragamo. Like, they weren't going to be crazy. They weren't going to air it out every play, but they were going to have to put the ball in his hands a little bit. The Steelers defense has now given up 3 long drives, and the Steelers defense really also not what it used to be. So let's talk about the makeup of the Steelers defense. Still there in 1979 are L.C. Greenwood, Joe Green, Mel Blount, Jack Lambert, and Donnie Shell. But the first 3 guys I named on that list, Greenwood, Green, and Blount, are in their 10th or 11th seasons, so they're not young anymore.
You mispronounced. It's Donnie Shell.
Injured or gone are guys like Jack Ham, Mike Wagner, Dwight White, Andy Russell, Glenn Edwards. And they're replaced with the likes of Gary Dunn, Dennis Winston, Ron Johnson. These are their starters on defense. Not bad players, but not exactly defensive stars. Not the same Steel Curtain 1976 shut out 5 teams and kind of defense. Yeah. So that's where the Steelers defense is. And again, the Rams are making plays. So don't look now, but the first half is coming to an end and the Rams are winning the game. And had the Rams gotten 2 touchdowns instead of 2 field goals on those 2 drives, they'd actually be blowing out the Steelers at halftime. Rams Hall of Fame offensive tackle Jackie Slater says, I remember getting close to their sideline and Terry Bradshaw, you could just see defeat written all over him. He said, I teased Terry about this, and I say, I'm one of the only people in the world that knows what your face looks like when you're losing a Super Bowl. So that was Jackie Slater. And then Donnie Shell.
There you go.
He said, quote, Jack Lambert hollered so hard in the huddle in the first half that I got scared. So, I mean, fortunately for the Steelers, they're only down 13-10 going into the half. That could have been a lot worse. But it's feeling a little bit like, this isn't good. Kind of like you said earlier, Steve, like, ooh, this doesn't feel like the Steelers dynasty. Here's John Facenda again.
At the end of the first half, nothing seemed right for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Players that are usually lively and lighthearted were guarded and somber. And the coach, Chuck Noll, who is usually grim and intense, was loose and full of fun.
I think that kind of helps that he was kind of relaxed. Like, I think it was the experience of Super Bowls past, and he kind of knew his team, like been there, done that, and staying loose probably helped this team in the second half.
You're actually spot on, Steve. I was going to mention that the Steelers players actually say later that they felt this wave of confidence seeing him laughing, because that just wasn't his personality. Then they were depressed. Again, Jack Lambert screaming at everybody. They're realizing that, like, we're in a dogfight here. And then they look over at Nolan. He's like messing with the cameraman, like whatever. He's just having fun with the game. And I don't know if that was like a strategic thing with Chuck Noll. It probably was to a degree. And
I think he just felt confident because he knew he could have been down by a lot more, and it wasn't like the Rams were this offensive juggernaut. So he knew what he had.
And this was the end of the decade. I mean, the Steelers had certainly been through enough big games at this point where I don't think Chuck Noll's getting too nervous. The Steelers get the second half kickoff. And once again, Larry Anderson sets them up with good field position. He has a nice return. So again, very helpful. But the Steelers offense, can they finally get going? Let's find out.
Terry Bradshaw began the second half with the same curiously conservative approach he had used in the first half, nibbling at the Ram defense with short, safe passes to his running backs. But then, like a pool hall hustler who has been trifling with his victim too long, Bradshaw suddenly showed his game.
He looks downfield, has time, cranks it going, long for Swan! He's got it! Swan, touchdown, Pittsburgh!
So what happens on that play is Bradshaw's actually hit as he throws the ball. So they had good pressure on Bradshaw. And there's two guys. Like, there's literally two guys right next to Swan. And he just leaps like 20 feet in the air and catches it. And so, yeah, I think if the Rams defensive back had better position, he probably could have stopped that. But my goodness, it's like those plays are so demoralizing when you it's not like you gave the quarterback all day. You got pressure on him. And then you had two guys there. That should have just been an incompletion. And Swan just leaps up and makes the catch. It just, hey, we Steelers were down, things weren't going well. So what do? You throw it up for your Hall of Fame Super Bowl hero, and he makes a Super Bowl hero play. That's what the Steelers do. The Steelers are back in the lead. They've shaken off whatever was going on in the first half. Time to just pull away and take home that fourth Lombardi trophy, right?
Ferragamo took a page from Bradshaw's Go for Broke book and hit Billy Waddy for a 50-yard gain.
To give you an idea of how conservative the Rams offense was, in their divisional round playoff win, Vince Ferragamo completes 9 passes. In the NFC title game, he completes 12 passes. He barely even attempts more than 20 passes in either of those playoff games. So that's the kind of offense the Rams are running with a backup quarterback. They're barely even throwing the ball. So they're not a team that's built to win by putting the ball in their quarterback's hands and letting him heave up 50-yard bombs. But they do it here, and it gets them down to the 24-yard line. And then on the very next play, this happens.
Before the Steelers could recover, the Rams struck again.
Ball goes to McCutcheon, option pass, he throws downfield, leaping dog, touchdown, Ron Smith!
Yeah, that was a halfback option pass. Like, they ran a sweep to the halfback, and then the Steelers are completely fooled because he threw the ball. Again, this was not the conservative Rams offense that everybody was expecting to see.
Donnie Shell got burned.
Everybody was just flat-footed because they thought it was a running play. It was first down too. They had just gotten a 50-yard gain. So what are they going to do? It's 1st and 10. Oh, they're just going to run it up the middle or whatever. And they run a halfback option. And you heard it in the clip there. It wasn't a play they had run all year. It wasn't on film at all. And I think John Facenda was kind of spot on there. You weren't going to win a game of this magnitude, beating an all-time great Steelers dynasty in the Super Bowl by playing it safe. So they heave up a 50-yard bomb. They run a halfback option play. The Steelers had just scored. It's just this demoralizing, like I said, demoralizing Lynn Swan touchdown, and bam, they come right back and take the lead again. So now it's 19-17 Rams, and it looks like maybe we're in for a shootout. The Steelers get the ball back. They're really struggling to run the ball at this point. Franco Harris finishes this game with 20 rushes for 46 yards. And Rocky Bleier only has 25 yards. So the running game is basically non-existent. We mentioned Bud Carson knowing a lot about how to stop the Steelers. He knows that if you can clog up their running lanes, then that probably gives the Rams their best chance to win. But hey, Terry Bradshaw, this isn't the early 70s Steelers where they had to run the ball to win. Terry Bradshaw's the reigning league MVP. So he'll win you the game, right? And the Steelers, after they get the ball back, they have it around midfield. And then Terry Bradshaw.
Bradshaw backs up. Here comes the rush. Bradshaw going to the far side, and it is picked off at the 28-yard line in LA territory.
Okay, so that's bad. But hey, no worries. The defense makes the Rams go 3 and out. The Steelers get the ball back, and they've got Lynn Swann, like we said, Mr. Dependable, Super Bowl hero. He'll make another play, right?
He may be shaken up. Pat Thomas came under him and made the tackle, and Swann flew through the air almost 5 yards and came down, and he is hurt.
Okay. So Lynn Swann is now out for the game, but that's okay. That's okay. The Steelers have other playmakers, and they're able to march down the field anyway. They have a 10-play drive, well executed. They're in the red zone. Even a field goal here gives them the lead back because it was 19-17. So let's see what happens.
Steelers at the Rams 16-yard line, driving right to left here with 1:27 to play in the third quarter at Pasadena. Bradshaw on third down is back there, and here's Terry firing, and it is broken up. It's going to be intercepted. Take it out of the air at the 5-yard line, and the play is stopped inside the 5. Rod Perry went up. The pass downfield was deflected up into the air.
It was intended for John Stallworth and deflected about 10 feet straight up in the air.
So let's just take stock here.
Oh my.
Terry. The Rams have a 19-17 lead. Vince Ferragamo and the Rams coaches are carving up the Steelers defense with totally unexpected game plan that they rolled out. Every time the Steelers have taken the lead, the Rams have taken it right back. Terry Bradshaw has now thrown 3 interceptions. Franco and Rocky can't run, and Lynn Swann is out for the rest of the game.
It's not looking good.
I think it's also important to remember that, if you're Steve and I's age or older, you'll remember that the Super Bowl every year was the single most predictable sporting event on the planet. It was almost never competitive, right?
Yeah.
And you knew who was going to win, and then they won by 30 points. Right? I mean, until probably the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, I would say, like,
exceptions.
Now, I didn't watch, like, growing up, like, my father was not a NFL fan. He always liked college football more, and he liked baseball better than football. So I did not watch a lot of Super Bowls growing up. Like, honestly, like, I really did not start watching the Super Bowl regularly probably till, I would say, 91, 92. So, and that was San Francisco. I remember the perfect example was that San Francisco Super Bowl where they went and blew out San Diego by like 30.
Right.
And really what changed it was the Elway Super Bowl against Green Bay. That's when they started to get, well, even the next year they blew out Atlanta. So
true, but that was around the era that it started to be at least a competitive game, and I think that was also when the free agency and the NFL parity started to come into play more. But the 70s and 80s and most of the 90s, it was like, okay,
although I mean the Super Bowl 30 wasn't a blowout per se.
No, that's fair. Like I said, there were exceptions. The San Francisco Cincinnati Super Bowl was an exception. But most of the time, you knew who
New England, Chicago, that wasn't
right.
A game.
Well, and that's why the Chicago Bears were able to get away with doing a Super Bowl shuffle music video like 6 weeks before the Super Bowl. Because everybody was just like, well, yeah, they're going to win the Super Bowl. We already knew that. You would just never see that today because there's a lot more parity, and it's not like that. And now, today, the exceptions are when it is a blowout, like when Tampa Bay blew out Kansas City a few years ago. Those are the exceptions. Back in this day, again, the team that was supposed to win always won. to have the massive underdog, the team with the backup quarterback, to be winning in the fourth quarter against the dynasty.
It was an exception. Yeah.
Yeah, that just never happened. The other stat that's not good is the Steelers are only 3-4 in games that year where they enter the fourth quarter trailing. So they had a losing record in games where they went into the fourth quarter behind. Also, because of that interception that you just heard, the Rams actually have the ball when the fourth quarter starts. So their offense, which we said is doing a good job kind of mixing things up, they start moving the ball again. But Steve Furness, who's one of those guys who had been there a long time but never really was a big name, he makes a huge sack on Ferragamo to stop that drive. So the Rams have to punt back. They pin the Steelers deep in their own territory. And the Steelers have 3rd and 8 from their own 27-yard line. They haven't really been able to get anything going. Terry Bradshaw's throwing picks. What's the call here? And can the Steelers come back in this game?
Great teams aren't always great. They're just great when they have to be.
Bradshaw calls out the signals. Remember, Pittsburgh, the most dangerous fourth-quarter team in the NFL.
And Bradshaw dropping back. Now Bradshaw pumping, firing downfield. There goes Stallworth. He pulls it in at the 30, the 20, the 10, the 5, and it's a touchdown for Pittsburgh on the ball to Stallworth.
That 73-yard touchdown is a play that is now legendary in Steelers lore. The play was called 60 prevent slot hook and go. It had been, believe it or not, Steve, a new play that Pittsburgh had added to its playbook in between the championship game and the Super Bowl.
It worked.
Yeah. Well, in the play call there was the wide receiver would fake a hook back towards the line of scrimmage and then just turn and sprint deep. So it was designed to split the safeties, so the safety would bite on the hook. And the Steelers had run that play 8 times in practice during the week. Guess how many times they completed the pass?
0.
Yeah. 0 out of 8.
Yeah.
And
so let's call it. Let's call that play. That doesn't work at all.
Third and 8 from your own 27-yard line in the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl where you're losing. Perfect time to run that play.
You know who called that play?
Who?
It had to be Terry. He called his own plays.
Oh, yeah.
So leave it to the.
Yeah, that's right. This is still the era where quarterbacks had that say.
Yeah, it didn't work. 0-8 in practice. That's the perfect. That is the most ADD call of my life. If you don't think Terry has ADD, that's exactly.
Well, and then as you heard,
to his credit, he was clutch though, man. When you know what, when he had to make the throw, he made the throw, man.
It was a perfect pass, but it also wasn't an easy catch. Like he hit him in stride, but he threw it over the opposite shoulder, so it was a hard catch. And Stallworth always had been in the shadow of Swan, but you could really make the argument. We talked about this in our 100 Greatest Players episode that Stallworth was maybe the better receiver. And after years of Swan coming up big in the Super Bowl, this is finally John Stallworth's moment to shine. I also
a great play by Stallworth. It really was.
Yeah. And I love what John Facenda says there too. Great teams aren't always great. They're just great when they have to be.
You didn't play like where he describes Stallworth. Like, is it this Super Bowl where he's like Tennessee whiskey, strong with a finishing kick or something like that?
I don't remember, or I didn't come across that in my clips, or else I would have put that in. That sounds tremendous.
Yeah.
But that great teams aren't always great. I mean, the Steelers have been far from great in this game, but that they make a huge play there. And now they're back in the lead with 12 minutes left in the game. But remember, each time they had taken the lead, Los Angeles had come right back. So Vince Ferragamo, backup quarterback, can he do it again? Let's go back to John Facenda.
Looking downfield, throws downfield, caught by Drew Hill and all about. Let's go! To the offensive line!
The Rams summoned up the heart no one thought they had.
Ferragamo trips up, regains his balance.
And slowly fought their way toward the Steeler goal. The Rams were on the verge of another score when Ferragamo made his first and only mistake of the game.
Ferragamo back to pass, shoots it over the middle. Intercepted by the Steelers. Lambert at the 15, the 20. Lambert still on his feet, cutting to the middle of the field, and he's down at the 30-yard line. First interception of the game off the arm of Ferragamo, and for Pittsburgh Steelers fans, it could not have come at a better time with 5:24 to go in the game.
So the Rams take the ball down the field again. Ferragamo makes some great plays, but he picks a really bad time to throw his first interception of the game. Jack Lambert picks it off deep in Steelers territory. Just a huge play by a Hall of Fame player. I mean, what else can you say there? Just
yeah, I mean, Jack Lambert, once again, great players make big plays at key times, and that was a big one. That kind of seals the victory, I think.
Well, let's talk about that, because there's still 5 minutes left in the game.
Yeah.
So that's still a lot of clock to run out. And the Steelers call 2 running plays to try to kill some clock, but they both get stuffed because obviously the Rams know, okay, you're just going to try to run the ball. So now they've got third down from their own 33-yard line. And they could really obviously use a first down here, right? If you get a first down, now you can bleed even more clock, make them use their timeouts. You certainly don't want to have to punt the ball back to Los Angeles right away because you had just intercepted them. Your defense had just gotten off the field, and now they're going to get to get the ball back and try to drive again. So you need a first down. Do you call a running play, just bleed clock? Do you call a pass play? You know what they call here, Steve? 60 prevent, slot, hook, and go.
Oh, no. The Rams aren't going to fall for this twice, are they?
Barrett had kept the game close, but by night, it faded into the black reality of the Pittsburgh Steelers mustering whatever it takes to win games when most of America is watching.
Pittsburgh just wants to maintain possession, and it's a very big third down play. Nickel defense in for Los Angeles. Bradshaw back to pass. He sets up at the 23. He throws long down the center of the field for Stallworth. He's got it at the 25 and down at the 22.
The first long pass to Stallworth had given the Steelers the lead. This one pointed the way to ultimate victory.
I love that clip too. The black reality of the Steelers mustering whatever it takes to win games when most of America is watching.
Yeah, so whoever wrote this was on their game.
Like I said, this is the peak for NFL films. I think they
don't make them like this anymore. Like they try and be too politically correct, and just this is sports. You don't have to be unbiased.
It's so well done. And
you don't have to do hot takes though. It's not a hot take either.
It's just like you said. It's a story. They're telling a story, and they're doing it masterfully. So yeah, I mean, that's a gutsy call there to call that same play. On
ADD. He forgot he called that play earlier. Like, oh, let's call this play. and it's so ADD. We had an ADD. Calling plays only in the 70s, Tim. Only in the 70s.
And you heard Stallworth say on the first pass that he thought, what did he say? Damn it, Terry, you've overthrown me. On this one, he said he was thinking, damn it, Terry, you've underthrown me. He actually has to adjust and kind of come back for it. So he doesn't get the second touchdown here. But what it does do is it puts a dagger into the Rams. A few plays later, Franco takes it into the end zone and makes the final score. Steelers 31, Rams 19.
And they cover. Yay.
And they cover.
Everybody goes home happy.
Not a pretty game after a not so pretty season, but the Steelers are Super Bowl champions for the 4th time in 6 years. So let's now come back to that 2018 game against the New England Patriots. Steve, I was at that game, and I had the usual trepidation heading into the stadium that day because I had been there for so many Patriots beatdowns of the Steelers over the years. Right. I was there for the championship games and all the other times that Tom Brady and that great New England team came in and we had this really good Steelers team and then they would just beat us because they were the Patriots. But that time, that 2018 game, it was different. And I remember very clearly walking out of the stadium that day with my brother and saying, this is not the New England Patriots. They looked slow, they looked old, they weren't in sync. This was not the Patriots anymore. Like maybe they're done. Well, 6 weeks later, guess what happens? The Patriots win the Super Bowl against, ironically, the Los Angeles Rams.
What was that the same game where what's his name had that big interception?
Joe Hayden, yes.
Yeah, he still considers that I guess he was at the game in LA when the Steelers were there a couple weeks ago, and he said that's the highlight of his career.
Yes. Yeah. And so the truth was, I think that 2018 Patriots team, they were no longer the dominant team they had been in years past. And sure enough, subsequent years revealed that truth, right? Because they fell apart after that. But in 2018, they had enough greatness left to make one last run. And I think that's what the 1979 Steelers were. Great teams aren't always great, but they muster up whatever it takes to win football games when most of America is watching. And that's why I wanted to go back to that 2018 Patriots game, because again, I remember thinking like, boy, that this is not the Patriots anymore. That 2018 Steelers team was mediocre. They didn't make the playoffs. And the fact that we had beaten them, I just thought, boy, this team's not the Patriots anymore. And I think that's probably what the Steelers were in 1979. But if you're that great, maybe you can squeeze out one last championship. And that's exactly what those two teams both did.
Yeah, so it's good for the Patriots.
Yeah, I'm sure you're very happy for them. So let's talk about the aftermath of Super Bowl 14. The Steelers are pretty much done after that. There's no one for the thumb, as we detailed in our 1980 Steelers episode.
But they'll win one for the thumb some point in the 80s, right, Tim? 90s?
Guys,
90s, 80s, right? Somewhere they got a quarterback.
Not even.
I mean, it's not like there's a local quarterback that might help them. That's literally right in their backyard.
Right. So like we detailed in that 1980s episode, not only do guys start retiring, but the team fails to rebuild. They botch.
Maybe they shouldn't have drafted a defensive lineman from Texas. Just saying.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It takes 26 years before the Steelers finally win another Super Bowl. The Rams don't fare a lot better. They're still pretty good in the 80s, but
the Rams won a Super Bowl before the Steelers did. After this Super Bowl,
they did. You're right.
Yeah.
They lose multiple NFC championships.
Unfortunately, they were in St. Louis when they did it, but
that's true. They go on to lose multiple NFC championship games in the 80s, just like they had done in the 70s. But they do make it back to a Super Bowl 20 years later, again, ironically, with their backup quarterback, a guy named Kurt Warner.
Yeah, I don't know if that's much of a backup.
He was
like
their
more of a Hall of Fame starting quarterback.
he that in 1999, he was their backup quarterback, just like Vince Ferragamo. And
poor Trent Dilfer. Trent Green, yeah. Poor Trent Green. He was good too. They probably would have won a Super Bowl with Trent Green.
Maybe. We'll never know. Vince Ferragamo does, he leads them to a Super Bowl. They do make him the starter in 1980, and he actually has a really good season. So it seems like, okay, kind of like Kurt Warner, like he was the backup. He came in, this guy's going to be our quarterback for years to come. But he makes a really interesting decision after that 1980 season. He signs with the Montreal Alouettes of the Canadian Football League because they offered him a truckload of money. And it doesn't really go
$600,000, according to Wikipedia.
Oh, really? Okay.
Which
that's a lot of money.
Is it 1981? That's probably like millions of dollars now.
Sure. It doesn't go real well for him in Canada. He eventually makes his way back to the Rams, but he never again really matches the success he had earlier. So
it says he has a 500-yard passing game against the Bears.
Yeah, he had his moments, but never really works out for him. John Stallworth plays 8 more seasons and then retires as the Steelers' all-time leading receiver. He's inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2002. CBS breaks up their top announcing pair of Pat Summerall and Tom Brookshire.
And they had John Madden.
Yeah, they replaced Brookshire with a guy named John Madden, who had just recently retired as the Oakland Raiders coach.
That was a genius move. Yes.
Pat Summerall says that decision literally saved his life.
Wow.
For CBS to step in and break them up. So.
Really? Wow. It was that bad.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yes.
Whatever happened to Tom Brookshire? I wonder if he's okay.
He was. I mean, they both kept announcing for CBS. They just didn't have them together going on road trips and stuff. That was the thing that was not good. So one last note for this season: the 1979 Steelers are the last team to win a championship with players that had never played for another team. Every single player on the 1979 Steelers roster had been either drafted or signed out of college by Pittsburgh. You'll never see that again, right?
Oh, no. Somebody will do that. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. I mean, that was before free agency. And yeah, now it seems like, I don't know. I know it's better for the players and it's probably somewhat better for the league, but I kind of liked it the other way where there's a little more consistent. Although it seems like the Patriots hacked the system for how many years there. I guess you got to have a Hall of Fame quarterback, probably one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time to really do that. But
well, I think it makes it where the draft, as much as it's changed, the draft is still probably the most important aspect of team building. It really is. I mean, if you don't draft well, you're still not going to have it. You can't fill all those gaps with free agents. I think free agents just supplement the draft, whereas before the draft is really all you had.
But yeah, and I think too, like I get tired of people like, well, why do the worst teams get the best player? Like you always hear like, especially like good players like whine and cry, like that guy from USC, like he's gonna pull like an Eli Manning or something. I don't want to play for San Diego, and I understand that at some point. Like if you think the management is bad, it's not like the Giants had a great season either, but. They want it like European football where you can pick who you. Well, not even that. I mean, then you just get like sold to another team. But
yeah, you have that every about 20 years. You have that one exception, like John Elway or Eli Manning. But that's typically it's the system still chugs along like it chugs along. So
yeah, I hope they don't change it. Like I don't know. I don't trust. I don't know, Tim.
They won't. The NFL.
I don't know. They're trying everything.
They value parity. They value parity because you can't when you have markets where teams are bad for years and years and years and can't get any better, than fans lose interest. And it also is bad for, like you said, the gambling and the fantasy football and all that. You need some kind of parity. I mean, it's true. You that's not good for that kind of stuff either. So. I don't see that changing, but I definitely don't see anybody ever fielding a team of players that have never played for anybody else. I don't think you'll ever see that again. So that's a unique attribute of that 1979 Steelers team for sure. So that's our episode on Super Bowl 14. Hope everybody liked it. Thanks everybody for listening.
And my memory of that was crying a lot and pooping in my diaper. No, 3, maybe not pooping in my diaper, but crying a lot. Yes.
Yeah, yes. I'm sure I had a very similar memory. Please check us out on social media. We're on Facebook and Twitter. Please subscribe to the show on whatever podcast service you listen to. And please let your friends know about the podcast. Word of mouth is still probably our best way to pull in new listeners. Thanks, everybody, and we will catch you next time.